Hi everyone, it's Zoe from Book Reviews with Zoe, and today's video is my September reading wrap up. So September was a pretty good month reading wise. I did fail my ping pong TBR and I did fail my adventure-a-thon TBR, mainly because Sufferathon's prompts did not fit either of those TBRs of mine. So that's okay. But let's get into the books that I read. As always, I'm probably not going to give you a great synopsis of these books. I'm probably going to forget half the books I read, but that's okay. Alright, so let's go in with just, these are in no particular order. I've just got them in a pile. I'm just going to go from the top down to the bottom. So the first one I read was Eve, Act Your Age, Eve Brown by Talia Hibbert, which is book 3 in the Brown Sisters. I absolutely adored this one. I actually think this one's probably my favourite, and that's probably because Eve Brown was really relatable. So I really enjoyed it. Love this book and I love this series, and I can't wait to read more of Talia Hibbert's work. But this is actually, yes, the next book is The Broken Bonds by J. Bree, which is book 1 in the Bonds That Tie series. I actually surprisingly enjoyed this book. I got this book at Rare in Melbourne when J. Bree was actually last minute had books for sale, so I just picked up the first one because I wasn't sure what their books were like, and I actually really enjoyed it, and I'll probably will continue this series just because I'm curious to know what's going on. The next book is the last book I actually read in September, which is Sally Thorne's book, Angelica Frankenstein Makes Her Match, which is Sally Thorne wrote The Hating Game, which I've not read. This book, it was enjoyable, but it was also not really memorable. Like, I found Angelica Frankenstein not that interesting. I found Victor Frankenstein not that interesting, and I really just didn't give a rat's ass about any of the characters, but I enjoyed it for what it was. The next book really surprised me in how much I actually enjoyed it, which is Whisper by Lynette Loney, who wrote the Mendorian Chronicles and the Prison Healer series. This is their more sci-fi YA book. YA, why not? Actually surprisingly enjoyed this book. It's not as good as the Mendorian Chronicles, but this is very different, but I really enjoyed it. So I highly recommend, if you're wanting to read more of Lynette Loney's books, I recommend picking up this duology, and I'm reading the next one in October. And the next book I purely read for Sufferathon because it was the lowest rated book on my physical TBR, which was this very shiny cover book, which is Heather the Totally by Matthew Weiner. And apparently Philip Pullman thought this was superb because that is what is on the right book. But this book, oh god, it was absolutely awful. It was only, how many pages was it? 134 pages, and it was just, I can see why it had an average rating of 2.15 stars or something, because it was awful. Like, no offense to the writer, but I really didn't care, and it was the only plus aside of this book was the fact that it was 150 pages long. So yep. The next book I read was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. This is very different to Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, which I've read. Actually really enjoyed it. It's a very different, it's a creative way of doing Greek retelling. And yeah, if you like Greek retellings, I recommend this book. The next book I read was The Atlas Six by Olivia Blake. And I read this early in the month, so I don't actually really remember much about it. But it's about 6 magicians and sort of games and stuff like that. It was good, but it wasn't amazing. So it's one of those books where I'm kind of like, will I continue this series? Maybe, but I probably won't deliberately buy any special edition like this one. I'll probably just get the rest from the library if I really want to finish this series. The next book I read was the latest in the Amari series, which is Amari and the Great Game by B.B. Alston. I enjoyed this as much as Amari and the Night Brothers, which was still an amazing middle grade, and this one was as fun. So I can't wait for book 3 of this series to come out, because B.B. Alston knows how to write a really good middle grade. And the second last book I read was The Second Empress by Michelle Moran in the Court of Napoleon. This is about the second wife of Napoleon, who was the princess of the Austrian royal family, I think. It's not my cup of tea. It was okay. So if you're into historical romances, maybe give this one a go. And the last book on this pile is Swords of Gods and Swords of Good Men by Snorri Johnson. This book, oh god, do I remember anything? This is the Valhalla Saga book 1. That's all I remember. It was really weirdly written. Like, I can't work out the style of writing. I couldn't work out if it was alternating being tenses and everything like that, and it just seemed to be really disjointed. So yeah, it's not my cup of tea. Right, so here are all the books that I read. It was a pretty good month. Surprisingly how busy I was, although I wanted to get all this reading done. One advantage of having half an hour each way train commute each day, so that helps. But if you got this far in this video, like this video, subscribe to this channel, and I will see you all later.
Living life, every day, late at night, not okay. All I want, and I